Last Tuesday, my husband Richard abandoned me at the Los Alamos National Laboratory during what was supposed to be our joint security clearance interview, telling the federal investigators that I was mentally unstable and unqualified for classified work. What he didn't know was that Dr. Elena Vasquez from the Department of Energy had been tracking my nuclear engineering research for 3 years and was about to offer me the most prestigious position in government nuclear science. By the end of this story, you'll understand why the people closest to us sometimes work the hardest to keep us from discovering our true potential. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. My name is Dr. Alexandra Alex Morgan, though for the past 8 years, I have been known simply as Mrs. Richard Blackwood, devoted wife to a mid-level contractor at Sandia National Laboratories. The irony of my situation was not lost on me. As I drove through the security checkpoints of the Kirtland Air Force Base each morning, my badge identifying me as a dependent spouse, rather than the nuclear physics PhD I had earned from Stanford University 12 years earlier. The transformation from Dr. Alexandra Morgan to Mrs. Richard Blackwood had been so gradual that I barely noticed when my professional identity disappeared entirely. It began with small compromises that seemed reasonable at the time. Richard's work schedule was demanding, requiring frequent travel and unpredictable hours that made it difficult for me to maintain consistent research commitments. The laboratory positions available in Albuquerque were limited, and the few opportunities that existed seemed designed for recent graduates rather than experienced researchers with advanced degrees. Initially, I had planned to take a temporary break from nuclear research while we settled into our new life in New Mexico. Richard's position at Sandia offered excellent benefits and career advancement potential, while the lower cost of living in Albuquerque would allow us to purchase a home and establish financial stability. The plan was for me to resume my research career once we were established, perhaps at the University of New Mexico, or through collaborative projects with the national laboratories in the area. However, temporary breaks have a way of becoming permanent arrangements when external pressures consistently reinforce the status quo. Richard's colleagues and their wives formed a tight social community, where traditional gender roles were not just accepted, but actively encouraged. Corporate social events featured conversations where men discussed technical challenges and career advancement, while women shared stories about home renovation projects and volunteer activities. The unspoken expectation was that wives supported their husbands' careers, rather than pursuing independent professional ambitions. My daily routine had evolved into a pattern that felt both comfortable and constraining. Morning preparations included reviewing Richard's schedule to ensure that his work clothes were properly maintained and his travel arrangements were organized. The house required constant attention, from routine cleaning and maintenance to the more elaborate preparations required for the frequent social gatherings that were essential to Richard's professional networking. Community involvement had become my primary source of intellectual stimulation and social connection. The Albuquerque League of Women Voters provided opportunities to engage with local policy issues, while volunteer work at the National Museum of Nuclear Science and History allowed me to maintain some connection to my field of expertise. These activities were fulfilling in their own right, but they also served as reminders of the research career I had abandoned. The museum volunteer work proved particularly bittersweet. Visitors frequently assumed that my knowledge of nuclear physics stemmed from being married to someone in the field, rather than from my own educational background and research experience. When I corrected these assumptions, the typical response was surprise, followed by questions about why I was not working in nuclear research myself. These conversations forced me to articulate explanations that I had never fully examined. The responses I offered to curious museum visitors revealed the extent to which I had internalized justifications for my career limitations. I explained that the nuclear industry was highly competitive and that positions requiring security clearances were difficult to obtain. I mentioned that research careers demanded extensive travel and unpredictable schedules that would interfere with family responsibilities. I suggested that volunteer work allowed me to contribute to nuclear education without the stress and pressure of professional research environments. Each explanation contained elements of truth, but collectively they represented a comprehensive rationalization for accepting limitations that I had never seriously challenged. The nuclear industry was indeed competitive, but my academic credentials and research background should have made me a strong candidate for available positions. Security clearances were required for many positions, but the clearance process was routine for qualified candidates with appropriate backgrounds. Research careers did involve travel and irregular schedules, but these characteristics also applied to Richard's work at Sandia. The social dynamics of our marriage had evolved to reinforce these limitations in subtle but persistent ways. Richard took pride in providing financially for our household, frequently mentioning that his salary allowed me to pursue volunteer activities rather than working out of economic necessity. He expressed appreciation for the support I provided for his career, acknowledging that my management of household responsibilities and social obligations enabled him to focus on demanding work projects. These expressions of gratitude felt genuine, but they also served to define my contributions in terms of their benefit to his career, rather than their intrinsic value. My volunteer work was praised for its civic contribution, rather than its intellectual content. My household management was appreciated for its efficiency, rather than its complexity. My social skills were valued for their contribution to Richard's professional networking, rather than their potential application in my own career development. Friends and family members reinforced these dynamics through their responses to our life choices. My parents expressed satisfaction that I had found a stable marriage with a financially successful husband who could provide security and comfort. Richard's family appreciated that he had married someone who understood the importance of supporting his career advancement. Mutual friends admired our apparent domestic harmony and financial stability. The positive feedback we received from others made it difficult to articulate dissatisfaction with arrangements that appeared successful from external perspectives. Our marriage looked ideal to outside observers, combining financial stability with social compatibility and shared interests in science and technology. The fact that I felt intellectually understimulated and professionally unfulfilled seemed like ingratitude rather than legitimate concern. Yet underneath the surface satisfaction with our established routine, persistent questions continued to emerge during quiet moments when distractions were unavailable. Late evening hours, when Richard was traveling for work and household tasks were completed, provided space for reflection that I both welcomed and resisted. These periods of solitude brought awareness of the gap between my current activities and my previous professional aspirations. The scientific journals that I continued to read revealed the ongoing advancement of nuclear research in areas where I had once contributed original insights. Former colleagues from Stanford appeared as authors on significant publications, their research building on foundations that I had helped establish during my graduate studies. Professional conferences that I had once attended regularly now proceeded without my participation, though I followed their proceedings through published abstracts and summary reports. Social media connections with former classmates and research collaborators provided regular updates on career achievements that I observed with a mixture of pride and regret. Promotions to senior research positions, appointments to prestigious advisory committees, and recognition through professional awards marked milestones that my former peers were achieving while I managed household schedules and organized social gatherings. The contrast between my current activities and my previous professional trajectory became particularly acute during conversations with Richard about his work at Sandia. His projects involved sophisticated technical challenges that required the kind of analytical thinking and problem-solving skills that I had developed through years of nuclear physics research. When he described difficulties with reactor modeling or radiation shielding calculations, I often recognized approaches that could address his challenges, but my suggestions were received as general encouragement rather than technical expertise. These interactions highlighted the extent to which my professional capabilities had become invisible within our marriage. Richard valued my intelligence and education in abstract terms, but he did not associate these qualities with practical expertise that could contribute to technical problem solving. My PhD in nuclear physics was acknowledged as an impressive achievement, but it was not perceived as a current resource for addressing contemporary challenges in nuclear science and engineering. The disconnect between my educational background and my current role became increasingly difficult to ignore as national discussions about nuclear energy intensified. Media coverage of reactor safety, waste storage, and energy policy frequently included technical inaccuracies that I could identify immediately. Public debates about nuclear technology revealed widespread misunderstanding of basic scientific principles that I had spent years studying and researching. My volunteer work at the National Museum of Nuclear Science and History provided some opportunities to address these knowledge gaps through educational programming and public outreach. However, these activities felt limited in scope and impact compared to the research and policy work that I might have pursued through professional employment. The museum work was valuable, but it also served as a constant reminder of the broader contributions I might have been making to nuclear science and public understanding of nuclear technology. The most challenging aspect of my situation was the growing awareness that my career limitations were largely self-imposed rather than externally mandated. No one had explicitly told me that I could not pursue nuclear research positions. No formal barriers prevented me from applying for positions at national laboratories or university research centers. No institutional policies restricted my access to professional opportunities based on my marital status or household responsibilities. Instead, the limitations had emerged through a series of small decisions and gradual adjustments that had seemed reasonable at the time but had collectively resulted in the complete abandonment of my professional aspirations. Each individual compromise had been justified by immediate circumstances and practical considerations, but the cumulative effect had been the systematic elimination of my career ambitions. This recognition created internal tension that became increasingly difficult to manage through the volunteer activities and social engagements that had previously provided sufficient intellectual stimulation. The gap between my capabilities and my current activities was becoming too large to ignore. Yet the practical challenges of resuming a nuclear research career after 8 years of absence seemed overwhelming. The nuclear industry valued current experience and active security clearances, both of which I lacked after years away from professional research. The technology had advanced significantly during my absence, requiring substantial time and effort to update my knowledge and skills. The professional networks that were essential for identifying opportunities and securing positions had atrophied through years of limited contact with active researchers. Perhaps most significantly, the confidence and professional identity that were necessary for pursuing challenging research positions had been eroded through years of accepting secondary roles and limiting my aspirations to accommodate others' expectations. The Dr. Alexandra Morgan, who had completed cutting-edge research at Stanford, felt like a different person from the Mrs. Richard Blackwood, who organized social gatherings and managed household logistics. Yet the fundamental capabilities that had enabled my academic and research achievements remained intact, even if they were currently applied to different purposes. The analytical thinking that had advanced nuclear physics research was equally effective for managing complex household schedules and coordinating volunteer activities. The attention to detail that had ensured accurate experimental procedures was equally valuable for organizing social events and maintaining household systems. The communication skills that had enabled effective collaboration with research teams were equally useful for facilitating community meetings and educating museum visitors. The project management abilities that had guided research initiatives from conception to completion were equally applicable to managing household renovations and coordinating family logistics. These capabilities were being utilized, but they were not being fully engaged or appropriately challenged. The work that occupied my time required only a fraction of my intellectual capacity, leaving substantial mental resources unused and unstimulated. This underutilization created a persistent sense of restlessness that no amount of volunteer activity or social engagement seemed capable of addressing. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now, back to the story. The restlessness intensified during news coverage of nuclear policy debates, where technical experts provided analyses and recommendations that shaped national energy strategy. These experts appeared to be my former peers, individuals with similar educational backgrounds and research experience who had maintained their professional engagement, while I had stepped away from active participation in nuclear science and policy. The realization that I could potentially contribute to these important discussions, but had chosen not to maintain the professional engagement necessary for such contributions, created a sense of regret that was becoming increasingly difficult to suppress. The volunteer work that had initially provided satisfying intellectual engagement now felt insufficient compared to the policy and research work that I might have been pursuing. This growing dissatisfaction with my current circumstances coincided with increasing demands from Richard's career that required even greater support from me. His recent promotion to a senior project management position at Sandia had brought increased responsibilities that included more frequent travel, longer work hours, and expanded social obligations that were essential for maintaining professional relationships with colleagues and clients. The promotion was a significant achievement that we had both worked toward, but it also required adjustments to our established routines that placed additional constraints on my time and energy. The increased social obligations included formal events, where I was expected to represent our family appropriately while supporting Richard's professional networking objectives. These requirements were not unreasonable, and they reflected normal expectations for spouses of senior professionals in technical fields. However, they also represented a further expansion of my supporting role and a corresponding reduction in the time and energy available for independent activities that might have led toward renewed professional engagement. The timing of these increased demands coincided with my growing awareness that the nuclear industry was experiencing significant changes that created new opportunities for experienced researchers. The national focus on clean energy development, reactor safety improvements, and nuclear waste management had created demand for technical expertise that exceeded the current supply of qualified professionals. Government agencies, national laboratories, and private companies were actively recruiting nuclear engineers and physicists with advanced degrees and research experience. Many of these positions offered opportunities to contribute to policy development and technology advancement that could have significant impact on national energy strategy and environmental protection. The knowledge that these opportunities existed, combined with the growing recognition that my current activities were not providing adequate intellectual stimulation or professional fulfillment, created internal pressure that was becoming increasingly difficult to manage. Yet the practical challenges of transitioning from 8 years of domestic focus back to active professional engagement seemed so substantial that serious consideration felt unrealistic. This internal conflict between growing dissatisfaction with current limitations and uncertainty about realistic alternatives was the context in which Richard announced that his latest project would require security clearance upgrades for both of us. The project involved collaboration with Los Alamos National Laboratory on advanced reactor safety systems, work that was classified at levels that required thorough background investigations and formal clearance approvals. The security clearance process would involve extensive interviews, document reviews, and character references that would examine every aspect of our personal and professional histories. For Richard, this represented a significant career advancement opportunity that would position him for even more senior roles at Sandia. For me, it represented something that I had not anticipated: a formal requirement to document and explain my educational background and research experience in nuclear physics. The clearance application process would force me to articulate my qualifications and capabilities in ways that I had not done for years. The federal investigators would review my academic transcripts, research publications, and professional references to evaluate my suitability for access to classified nuclear technology information. This review process would create an official record of my expertise and qualifications that might open possibilities that I had not seriously considered. As we began preparing for the security clearance interviews, I found myself reviewing my academic and research history with a perspective that had been dormant for 8 years. The process of organizing transcripts, publication lists, and reference contacts reminded me of the substantial expertise I had developed and the significant contributions I had made to nuclear science research. This preparation process created anticipation and anxiety in equal measure, as it represented both an opportunity to reconnect with my professional identity and a potential catalyst for changes that would disrupt our established domestic arrangements. The security clearance interview would require me to present myself as Dr. Alexandra Morgan, nuclear physicist, rather than Mrs. Richard Blackwood, supportive spouse. The transformation, even if temporary, felt both thrilling and terrifying as the interview date approached. The morning of our security clearance interview at Los Alamos National Laboratory dawned with the kind of crystalline clarity that characterizes New Mexico's high desert landscape. As we drove through the winding mountain roads that led to the laboratory complex, Richard maintained the focused silence that had become his standard preparation mode for important professional encounters. I occupied the passenger seat with my carefully organized folder of documentation, reviewing the materials that would be examined during our individual and joint interviews with federal security investigators. The drive provided ample time for reflection on the significance of this process for both our futures. Richard viewed the security clearance upgrade as essential validation of his professional advancement at Sandia National Laboratories, a formal recognition that he possessed the expertise and trustworthiness required for the most sensitive nuclear technology projects. The clearance would position him for promotion to senior management roles that carried substantial responsibility for national security initiatives and significant influence over multi-million-dollar research programs. For me, the security clearance process represented something more complex and unexpected. The application requirements had forced me to compile comprehensive documentation of my educational background, research experience, and professional qualifications in nuclear physics. This documentation process had served as an inadvertent inventory of capabilities that I had not formally articulated for nearly 8 years, revealing the depth and breadth of expertise that had been lying dormant during my extended focus on domestic responsibilities. The federal investigators would review my Stanford University transcripts, which documented advanced coursework in nuclear reactor physics, radiation transport theory, and nuclear materials science. They would examine my doctoral dissertation on neutron flux optimization in pressurized water reactors, research that had contributed to improvements in reactor efficiency and safety protocols. They would contact references from my graduate research, including faculty advisors whose current work continued to build on foundations that I had helped establish during my doctoral studies. This comprehensive review process would create an official federal record of my qualifications and expertise, documentation that might have implications extending far beyond the immediate requirements of Richard's project collaboration. The security clearance investigation would formally recognize my capabilities in ways that had not occurred since I completed my doctoral degree more than a decade earlier. The Los Alamos National Laboratory Complex sprawled across the Pajarito Plateau, with the imposing presence that characterized facilities responsible for the most sensitive aspects of national nuclear security. Guard stations, identification checkpoints, and perimeter fencing reinforced the gravity of the work conducted within these buildings, where scientists and engineers addressed challenges that could affect global stability and environmental protection. We completed the initial security procedures with the efficiency that comes from familiarity with high-security environments. Richard's existing clearance credentials facilitated our entry, though the upgrade process would require much more thorough examination of our backgrounds, associations, and character references. The administrative building where our interviews would be conducted maintained the austere functionality typical of government facilities, with conference rooms designed for serious discussion rather than comfort or aesthetic appeal. The preliminary briefing outlined the interview structure and documentation requirements with the precision characteristic of federal security procedures. We would undergo separate individual interviews followed by a joint session where investigators would examine aspects of our relationship and shared circumstances that might affect our suitability for access to classified information. The process was designed to identify any factors that could create security vulnerabilities or conflicts of interest. Richard's individual interview proceeded first, conducted in a conference room adjacent to the waiting area where I remained with my documentation folder. The muffled sounds of conversation through the closed door suggested a routine progression through standard questions about employment history, financial circumstances, foreign contacts, and character references. These were familiar topics for someone with existing security clearance who was seeking an upgrade to higher classification levels. My preparation time in the waiting area provided an opportunity to review materials that I had not examined comprehensively for years. My doctoral dissertation, printed and bound in the formal style required by Stanford University, represented 3 years of intensive research into neutron flux optimization techniques that had practical applications for improving reactor safety and efficiency. The mathematical models and computational methods that I had developed remained relevant to current reactor design challenges, though the technology had advanced significantly during my absence from active research. The publication list attached to my clearance application documented peer-reviewed articles in prestigious nuclear engineering journals, conference presentations at international symposiums, and collaborative research projects with national laboratory scientists. These publications had contributed to the advancement of nuclear science and had been cited by other researchers whose work built on my findings. The cumulative impact of this research represented a substantial contribution to the field, though I had not maintained awareness of how subsequent developments had incorporated my insights. Professional references included faculty members from Stanford University who could attest to the quality of my research and my potential for continued contribution to nuclear science. Dr. Margaret Chen, my doctoral advisor, had remained active in reactor physics research and continued to publish influential work in the field. Dr. Robert Martinez, who had supervised my work on computational modeling techniques, had been appointed to senior positions at the Department of Energy and maintained involvement in policy development for nuclear technology advancement. These references represented connections to the highest levels of nuclear science research and policy development, relationships that I had maintained through occasional correspondence but had not leveraged for professional opportunities. The security clearance investigation would require these individuals to provide formal assessments of my qualifications, character, and potential contributions to classified research programs. When Richard emerged from his individual interview, his expression reflected the satisfaction typical of someone who had successfully navigated a routine professional hurdle. He indicated that the questions had covered expected topics and that the investigators appeared satisfied with his responses and documentation. The process had confirmed his suitability for the clearance upgrade and positioned him well for advancement within his current project responsibilities. My individual interview began with standard questions about personal history, educational background, and employment circumstances. The federal investigator, a woman in her 40s with the methodical demeanor characteristic of security professionals, reviewed my documentation with careful attention to details that revealed the depth of my nuclear physics expertise. The questions quickly moved beyond routine biographical information to focus on technical aspects of my research background that demonstrated sophisticated understanding of nuclear science and engineering. The investigator possessed sufficient technical knowledge to engage meaningfully with my dissertation research and publication record, asking specific questions about methodologies, findings, and practical applications that revealed genuine expertise rather than superficial familiarity with nuclear physics. This technical discussion felt simultaneously familiar and foreign, as it required me to access knowledge and analytical capabilities that had been dormant for years. The concepts and methodologies remained clear in my memory, but articulating them professionally required mental effort that had not been demanded by my recent activities. The interview process was effectively reactivating intellectual capabilities that had been maintained but not utilized. The investigator's questions revealed awareness of current developments in nuclear research that connected directly to my historical work. Recent advances in reactor safety modeling had built on computational techniques that I had pioneered during my doctoral research. New approaches to neutron flux optimization incorporated mathematical frameworks that I had developed and published. Current policy discussions about reactor design standards referenced principles that had emerged from research projects where I had been a primary contributor. This awareness of the continued relevance of my work came as a surprise, as I had not maintained systematic contact with developments in nuclear research during my years of domestic focus. The realization that my research had continued to influence the field and that current challenges remained connected to my areas of expertise created unexpected excitement about the potential for renewed professional engagement. The technical discussion also revealed gaps in my knowledge of recent technological advances and regulatory developments that had occurred during my absence from active research. New computational tools, updated safety protocols, and evolving international standards represented areas where additional education would be necessary for effective participation in contemporary nuclear science projects. However, the investigators' questions suggested that these knowledge gaps were manageable rather than prohibitive, representing updates to existing expertise rather than fundamental retraining requirements. The foundational knowledge and analytical capabilities that I had developed through years of advanced study and research remained relevant and valuable, even if specific applications required updating to reflect current technology and regulatory frameworks. The individual interview concluded with questions about my current activities and future professional interests, but required careful consideration of responses that I had not anticipated. The investigator asked whether I maintained interest in nuclear research and whether circumstances might support renewed professional engagement in the field. These questions suggested that the security clearance process might create opportunities for professional involvement that extended beyond the immediate requirements of Richard's project collaboration. My responses acknowledged continued interest in nuclear science while expressing uncertainty about practical opportunities for professional re-engagement. The investigators' follow-up questions suggested that this uncertainty might be premature, as current workforce demands in nuclear research exceeded available expertise in several specialized areas where my background could provide valuable contributions. The transition to the joint interview session brought Richard and me together with two federal investigators who would examine aspects of our relationship and shared circumstances that could affect security clearance decisions. This portion of the process typically addressed financial circumstances, foreign contacts, and potential conflicts of interest that might create security vulnerabilities. The joint interview began with routine questions about our marriage, shared financial obligations, and family circumstances that might affect our ability to maintain security requirements. These questions proceeded smoothly until the investigators began examining my professional background and its relationship to Richard's current work responsibilities at Sandia National Laboratories. The investigators had clearly conducted thorough research into my educational and research background, as their questions demonstrated detailed knowledge of my doctoral work and its relevance to current nuclear technology challenges. They asked about potential conflicts of interest that might arise if I were to pursue professional opportunities in nuclear research while Richard maintained his position at Sandia. Richard's expression during this line of questioning revealed surprise and discomfort that I had not anticipated. He appeared to be learning details about my research background and its current relevance that had not been fully apparent to him previously. The investigators' technical questions about my work seemed to highlight aspects of my expertise that Richard had not fully understood or appreciated. The discussion of potential conflicts of interest assumed professional scenarios that Richard and I had never seriously considered. The investigators asked about procedures for managing classified information access if both spouses were involved in sensitive nuclear research projects. They inquired about protocols for handling situations where professional obligations might create competing loyalties or information sharing restrictions. These questions presupposed professional engagement for me that had not been part of our previous planning or discussion. The investigators appeared to assume that my qualifications and current workforce demands would naturally lead to employment opportunities in nuclear research, a possibility that had not been central to our thinking about the security clearance process. Richard's responses to these questions became increasingly brief and uncomfortable as the implications of the discussion became apparent. The possibility that I might pursue independent professional opportunities in nuclear research clearly represented a scenario that he had not anticipated and was not prepared to address constructively. The joint interview concluded with administrative details about background check procedures, reference contact protocols, and timeline expectations for clearance approval. The investigators indicated that the process would likely require several weeks for completion, during which time they would conduct thorough background investigations and character reference interviews. As we prepared to leave the interview facility, one of the investigators made an unexpected request. She asked if I would be available for a brief conversation with Dr. Elena Vasquez from the Department of Energy, who apparently had questions about my research background that were related to current workforce planning initiatives. This request came as a complete surprise, as I had no previous contact with Dr. Vasquez and no knowledge of Department of Energy interest in my background. The investigator explained that Dr. Vasquez had become aware of my qualifications through the security clearance documentation and wished to discuss potential collaboration opportunities that might be relevant to current national nuclear research priorities. Richard's reaction to this request was immediate and negative. He expressed concern that additional meetings would unnecessarily complicate the security clearance process and potentially create scheduling conflicts with his work responsibilities. He suggested that such discussions should be postponed until after the clearance approval was completed and his project requirements were clearly established. The investigator explained that Dr. Vasquez's request was separate from the security clearance process and would not affect the timeline or requirements for approval. The meeting would be entirely voluntary and would focus on general workforce development issues rather than specific employment opportunities or commitments. Despite Richard's continued objections, I agreed to meet with Dr. Vasquez primarily out of curiosity about the nature of her interest in my background. The meeting was scheduled for the following week at the Department of Energy offices in Santa Fe, a location that would be convenient for both of our schedules. The drive home from Los Alamos proceeded in tense silence as Richard processed the unexpected developments from our interview session. His discomfort with the investigators, questions about potential conflicts of interest, and the invitation to meet with Dr. Vasquez had clearly disrupted his expectations about the security clearance process and its implications for our established domestic arrangements. When he finally spoke, Richard expressed frustration that I had not adequately prepared him for the extent of my research background and its potential relevance to current nuclear science initiatives. He indicated that the investigators' questions had made him appear uninformed about his own wife's qualifications and professional capabilities. This criticism felt particularly unfair, as I had never deliberately concealed my educational background or research experience. The information had simply become less relevant to our daily conversations, as my focus shifted to domestic responsibilities and volunteer activities. Richard had known about my doctoral degree and research background, but we had not regularly discussed the technical details or current applications of my work. The tension in our conversation revealed the extent to which my professional identity had become invisible within our marriage. Richard valued my intelligence and education in abstract terms, but he had not maintained awareness of how my expertise related to his own work environment or professional challenges. My nuclear physics background had been reduced to a biographical detail rather than a current capability that might have practical relevance. The invitation to meet with Dr. Vasquez represented the first external recognition of my professional qualifications that had occurred in years. The fact that someone within the Department of Energy had identified my background as potentially valuable for current initiatives suggested possibilities that I had not seriously considered during my extended focus on domestic responsibilities. This external validation created excitement and anxiety in equal measure. The excitement stemmed from recognition that my expertise might remain relevant and valuable despite years of absence from active research. The anxiety arose from uncertainty about whether I possessed the current knowledge and confidence necessary for meaningful professional engagement in nuclear science. The week following our Los Alamos interview passed with unusual tension, as Richard and I processed the implications of what had been revealed during our security clearance session. Richard continued to express concerns about potential complications that might arise from my meeting with Dr. Vasquez, particularly if such discussions led to employment opportunities that could conflict with his career advancement at Sandia. These concerns revealed assumptions about our relationship and professional priorities that had not been explicitly discussed previously. Richard appeared to assume that his career would remain our primary focus and that my professional activities would be secondary considerations that should not interfere with his advancement opportunities. This assumption felt increasingly problematic, as I contemplated the possibility that my nuclear physics expertise might be valuable for addressing current national research priorities. The invitation from Dr. Vasquez suggested that workforce needs in nuclear science might create opportunities for meaningful professional engagement that could provide the intellectual stimulation and career fulfillment that had been missing from my volunteer activities. The meeting with Dr. Vasquez was scheduled for Tuesday afternoon at the Department of Energy offices in Santa Fe. As the appointment approached, I found myself researching current developments in nuclear research to prepare for discussions that might address technical topics I had not engaged with professionally for years. This preparation process revealed both the continued relevance of my historical research and the extent of technological advancement that had occurred during my absence from the field. New computational tools, updated safety protocols, and evolving international standards represented areas where additional education would be beneficial, but the foundational knowledge remained applicable to current challenges. The anticipation of discussing nuclear science professionally for the first time in years created excitement that I had not experienced since completing my doctoral degree. The possibility of contributing to research that could affect national energy policy and environmental protection represented exactly the kind of meaningful work that had originally motivated my pursuit of advanced education in nuclear physics. As I prepared for the meeting with Dr. Vasquez, I began to recognize that the security clearance process had served as more than just a routine requirement for Richard's project advancement. It had become a catalyst for examining my own professional capabilities and considering possibilities that had been dormant for nearly 8 years. The documentation and interviews had forced me to articulate qualifications and expertise that had been maintained but not utilized, revealing the substantial gap between my current activities and my potential contributions to nuclear science. This recognition created anticipation for the meeting with Dr. Vasquez, while also generating anxiety about whether I possessed the confidence and current knowledge necessary for professional re-engagement in nuclear research. The stage was set for a conversation that could potentially transform my understanding of available opportunities and my perception of realistic possibilities for professional fulfillment in nuclear science. The Department of Energy offices in Santa Fe occupied a modern building that reflected the serious governmental work conducted within its walls. As I approached the entrance for my meeting with Dr. Elena Vasquez, I carried the same folder of documentation that had accompanied me to the Los Alamos security clearance interview, though this meeting promised to address entirely different aspects of my professional background and capabilities. Dr. Vasquez greeted me in the lobby with the professional warmth characteristic of senior scientists who had spent years managing complex research initiatives and personnel development programs. Her appearance and demeanor suggested someone accustomed to making consequential decisions about nuclear research priorities and workforce allocation, responsibilities that required both technical expertise and sophisticated understanding of policy implications. The conference room where we conducted our discussion contained wall displays that illustrated the scope of Department of Energy nuclear research initiatives, from advanced reactor development to waste management systems to international non-proliferation programs. These visual representations of current projects provided context for understanding the breadth of scientific challenges that required ongoing expertise and innovation. Dr. Vasquez began our conversation by acknowledging that she had become aware of my background through the security clearance documentation process, though she indicated that her interest extended beyond the immediate requirements of Richard's project collaboration. She explained that the Department of Energy maintained ongoing assessment of available expertise in critical nuclear science areas, particularly given workforce challenges that affected national research capabilities. This explanation surprised me, as I had not considered that federal agencies would track individual researchers who were not actively employed in nuclear science positions. Dr. Vasquez clarified that the Department of Energy monitored graduates of prestigious nuclear engineering programs and authors of significant research publications, maintaining awareness of potential contributors to national nuclear research initiatives, even when those individuals were not currently engaged in professional practice. The conversation proceeded to a detailed review of my doctoral research and its relationship to current nuclear technology challenges. Dr. Vasquez demonstrated sophisticated understanding of neutron flux optimization techniques and their applications to reactor safety and efficiency improvements. Her questions revealed that computational methods I had developed during my Stanford research continued to influence current reactor modeling approaches used by national laboratories and private industry. This discussion required me to access technical knowledge and analytical capabilities that had been dormant for years, though the fundamental concepts remained clear and accessible. Dr. Vasquez asked specific questions about mathematical frameworks, computational algorithms, and experimental validation techniques that demanded professional-level responses rather than general explanations suitable for public education contexts. The intellectual engagement of this technical discussion felt simultaneously exhilarating and intimidating. The exhilaration stemmed from recognition that my expertise remained relevant and valued at the highest levels of nuclear research administration. The intimidation arose from awareness of knowledge gaps that had developed during my years away from active professional engagement with nuclear science advancement. Dr. Vasquez addressed these knowledge gaps directly, explaining that the Department of Energy maintained comprehensive professional development programs designed to update returning researchers on technological advances and regulatory changes that had occurred during career interruptions. These programs recognized that nuclear science required continuous learning, and that even experienced researchers needed periodic updating to maintain current competence. The availability of such professional development resources surprised me, as I had assumed that career interruptions would create insurmountable barriers to re-entry into nuclear research. Dr. Vasquez indicated that workforce shortages in specialized nuclear science areas had prompted the Department of Energy to develop systematic approaches for reconnecting qualified individuals with current research initiatives, particularly those with advanced degrees and demonstrated research capabilities. Our discussion then addressed the practical aspects of nuclear research employment, including security clearance requirements, laboratory access protocols, and collaboration procedures that governed work on classified projects. Dr. Vasquez explained that my ongoing security clearance investigation would facilitate access to research opportunities that required federal approval, positioning me advantageously for consideration for sensitive positions. The conversation revealed that current workforce demands exceeded available expertise in several areas directly related to my doctoral research focus. Advanced reactor safety modeling, computational optimization techniques, and experimental validation methodologies represented priority areas where additional expertise could contribute significantly to national research objectives and policy development. Dr. Vasquez outlined specific research initiatives that were actively seeking qualified personnel, including projects at Los Alamos National Laboratory, Sandia National Laboratories, and Lawrence Livermore National Laboratory. These positions offered competitive compensation, comprehensive benefits, and opportunities to contribute to cutting-edge research that could influence national energy policy and international non-proliferation efforts. The discussion of concrete employment opportunities created excitement and anxiety in equal measure. The excitement arose from recognition that meaningful professional engagement in nuclear science remained achievable despite my extended absence from active research. The anxiety emerged from consideration of the practical and personal implications of pursuing such opportunities. Dr. Vasquez addressed these concerns by emphasizing that employment decisions would remain entirely voluntary and that initial engagement could involve consulting arrangements or part-time positions that would allow gradual reintegration into professional nuclear research. The Department of Energy recognized that career transitions required careful planning and that family considerations often influenced the timing and structure of professional re-engagement. However, as our conversation progressed, I found myself articulating reservations and concerns that revealed the depth of psychological conditioning that had developed during my years of domestic focus. I expressed uncertainty about whether my knowledge remained current enough for meaningful contribution to advanced research projects. I questioned whether my confidence and professional identity could be effectively restored after years of absence from demanding technical work. These self-doubts reflected limiting beliefs that had been reinforced through years of accepting secondary roles and minimizing my professional capabilities. Dr. Vasquez responded to these concerns with direct challenges to the assumptions underlying my hesitation, pointing out that my doctoral research continued to be cited in current publications and that my computational methodologies remained state-of-the-art approaches to reactor optimization problems. The conversation also addressed practical considerations related to my marriage and family circumstances. Dr. Vasquez asked about potential conflicts of interest that might arise if both Richard and I were employed in nuclear research positions, particularly given security protocols that governed information sharing between spouses working on classified projects. This discussion required me to consider scenarios that Richard and I had never explicitly addressed. The possibility of independent professional engagement in nuclear research would necessarily alter our established domestic arrangements and could create new dynamics in our marriage that we had not anticipated or planned for. Dr. Vasquez indicated that such situations were not uncommon in nuclear research communities, and that established protocols existed for managing security requirements and potential conflicts of interest when spouses were both involved in classified work. These protocols were designed to enable professional engagement while maintaining security standards in family relationships. The meeting concluded with Dr. Vasquez providing me with detailed information about current research opportunities, professional development programs, and application procedures for positions that matched my background and expertise. She emphasized that no immediate decisions were required, and that the information was provided to enable informed consideration of possibilities that might align with my professional interests and family circumstances. As I left the Department of Energy offices, I carried materials that documented concrete opportunities for professional re-engagement in nuclear science, information that represented possibilities I had not seriously considered for nearly 8 years. The meeting had transformed vague notions about potential career resumption into specific options with clear requirements and realistic timelines. The drive back to Albuquerque provided time for processing the implications of what Dr. Vasquez had revealed about my professional prospects and the current demand for expertise in my areas of specialization. The recognition that my research capabilities remained valuable and that systematic support existed for career reentry challenged fundamental assumptions I had developed about the permanence of my career limitations. However, alongside the excitement generated by these discoveries, I experienced increasing anxiety about the practical and emotional challenges that would accompany any decision to pursue professional re-engagement. The prospect of returning to demanding technical work after years of domestic focus felt simultaneously appealing and overwhelming. The information drive Vasquez had provided required careful consideration of factors that extended beyond my individual preferences and capabilities. Employment in nuclear research would affect our family finances, daily schedules, social obligations, and long-term planning in ways that would require extensive discussion and negotiation with Richard. More fundamentally, the possibility of independent professional achievement would challenge the established dynamics of our marriage, where Richard's career had served as our primary focus, and my activities had been structured to support his advancement. Professional engagement in nuclear research would necessarily require independent decision-making and priority setting that might conflict with previous patterns of accommodation and support. When I arrived home that evening, Richard was waiting with obvious anticipation for a report on my meeting with Dr. Vasquez. His questions revealed expectations that the conversation had been routine and preliminary, focused on general workforce development issues rather than specific employment opportunities or career planning. My explanation of what had actually transpired during the meeting surprised and concerned Richard in ways that I had not anticipated. The revelation that Dr. Vasquez had outlined concrete research positions and provided detailed information about professional development resources clearly represented developments that he viewed as potentially disruptive to our established arrangements. Richard's initial response focused on practical objections to my consideration of nuclear research employment. He expressed concerns about security clearance complications that might arise if both of us were involved in classified work. He questioned whether my technical knowledge remained current enough for meaningful contribution to advanced research projects. He suggested that career interruptions had likely created knowledge gaps that would require extensive remediation before effective professional engagement would be possible. These objections contained elements of legitimate concern, but they also reflected assumptions about my capabilities and limitations that had not been challenged for years. Richard appeared to have internalized beliefs about my professional prospects that were more restrictive than the assessment provided by Dr. Vasquez, who possessed comprehensive knowledge of current workforce needs and qualification requirements. The conversation revealed the extent to which Richard had become comfortable with our established domestic arrangements and resistant to changes that might alter the distribution of responsibilities and priorities within our marriage. My potential professional re-engagement represented uncertainty and disruption that he was not prepared to embrace enthusiastically. Richard's concerns also reflected deeper insecurities about the implications of my independent professional success for our relationship dynamics and his own career advancement. The possibility that I might achieve recognition and advancement in nuclear research could challenge his role as the primary professional achiever in our family, creating new dynamics that he was not confident about managing effectively. Our discussion of these issues continued for several hours, with Richard articulating increasingly detailed objections to my consideration of the opportunities that Dr. Vasquez had outlined. He expressed concerns about the time commitments required for professional development programs, the travel demands associated with national laboratory positions, and the security restrictions that would govern my professional activities. Each objection contained elements of practical consideration, but collectively they represented systematic resistance to possibilities that could enhance my professional fulfillment and contribute to important national research objectives. Richard's approach focused on identifying obstacles and complications, rather than exploring solutions or accommodations that might enable successful career re-engagement. This resistance pattern felt familiar from previous conversations about my professional interests and career possibilities. Throughout our marriage, Richard had consistently emphasized practical challenges and potential problems associated with my independent professional pursuits, while expressing abstract support for my capabilities and achievements. The conversation also revealed the extent to which I had internalized similar resistance patterns, automatically assuming that obstacles were insurmountable, rather than manageable challenges that could be addressed through careful planning and systematic effort. Years of accepting limitations had created psychological habits that discouraged serious consideration of ambitious professional goals. Dr. Vasquez's assessment of my qualifications and the current demand for expertise in my areas of specialization challenged these limiting beliefs directly. Her confidence in my potential contributions to nuclear research was based on objective evaluation of my background and current workforce needs, rather than assumptions about the difficulties associated with career reentry. However, translating this external validation into internal confidence and practical action would require confronting years of accumulated self-doubt and family dynamics that had reinforced accepting secondary roles. The psychological work involved in this transformation felt as challenging as the technical preparation required for professional re-engagement in nuclear science. The week following my meeting with Dr. Vasquez passed with continuing tension as Richard and I processed the implications of the opportunities that had been presented. Richard maintained his focus on practical objections and potential complications, while I found myself alternating between excitement about professional possibilities and anxiety about the challenges associated with pursuing them. The materials that Dr. Vasquez had provided required systematic review and consideration of factors, including salary expectations, geographic requirements, security protocols, and professional development timelines. This analysis revealed that nuclear research positions offered compensation significantly higher than what I had earned in my previous employment, potentially altering our family's financial circumstances in positive ways. The research opportunities also aligned closely with my intellectual interests and professional capabilities, offering prospects for meaningful work that could contribute to national energy policy and environmental protection. The potential for such significant professional fulfillment contrasted sharply with the limited intellectual engagement provided by my current volunteer activities and household management responsibilities. However, pursuing these opportunities would require substantial changes to our established routines and priorities. Professional development programs would demand time and attention that were currently allocated to supporting Richard's career and managing household responsibilities. Research positions would involve travel and irregular schedules that could conflict with social obligations and family commitments. Most significantly, independent professional engagement would require confidence and decision-making capabilities that had been dormant for years. The psychological transformation involved in resuming demanding professional responsibilities felt as challenging as the technical preparation required for effective performance in advanced nuclear research positions. As I contemplated these challenges, I began to recognize that the resistance I was experiencing reflected not only practical concerns, but also deeper questions about my identity and priorities. The possibility of professional re-engagement forced consideration of who I wanted to be and what I wanted to achieve during the remaining decades of my working life. The choice between continuing my current focus on domestic responsibilities and volunteer activities versus pursuing demanding professional engagement in nuclear research represented fundamentally different visions of my future and different definitions of meaningful contribution to family and society. Dr. Vasquez had provided evidence that my expertise remained valuable and that opportunities existed for significant professional achievement. The question that remained was whether I possessed the courage and determination necessary to pursue those opportunities despite the obstacles and resistance that would inevitably accompany such a transformation. The information packet that Dr. Elena Vasquez had provided contained detailed documentation about current nuclear research initiatives, professional development opportunities, and specific position openings that aligned with my educational background and expertise. Over the following week, I conducted systematic analysis of these materials, while Richard continued his project work at Sandia National Laboratories, maintaining our established routine despite the underlying tension created by my potential career opportunities. The research positions outlined in the Department of Energy documentation represented sophisticated technical challenges that required advanced expertise in areas where I had demonstrated capability during my doctoral studies at Stanford University. The Los Alamos National Laboratory maintained active research programs in reactor safety optimization, neutron transport modeling, and computational fluid dynamics applications that directly connected to methodologies I had developed during my graduate research. Sandia National Laboratories had initiated new projects focused on nuclear waste storage systems, advanced materials testing, and risk assessment protocols that would benefit from the analytical approaches I had pioneered in my dissertation work. Lawrence Livermore National Laboratory was expanding research in nuclear security applications, non-proliferation technologies, and international monitoring systems that required expertise in areas where my publications had contributed to current understanding. Each position description included detailed technical requirements, educational qualifications, and experience expectations that revealed the sophisticated nature of the work while demonstrating clear alignment with my background. The compensation ranges significantly exceeded my previous earnings and reflected the premium value placed on advanced nuclear science expertise in current market conditions. The professional development programs described in Dr. Vasquez's materials addressed my concerns about knowledge gaps that had developed during my absence from active research. The Department of Energy maintained comprehensive continuing education initiatives designed specifically for experienced researchers who needed to update their expertise on technological advances and regulatory changes that had occurred during career interruptions. These programs included intensive courses on current computational tools, updated safety protocols, and evolving international standards that governed nuclear research and development. The curriculum was structured to build on existing expertise rather than requiring fundamental retraining, recognizing that experienced researchers possessed foundational knowledge that could be efficiently updated through focused instruction. The availability of systematic professional development support challenged my assumptions about the barriers to career re-entry in nuclear science. I had believed that technological advancement during my absence would create insurmountable knowledge gaps, but the Department of Energy programs were explicitly designed to address such situations and had demonstrated success in reconnecting qualified individuals with current research initiatives. I began conducting independent research into recent developments in nuclear science to assess the scope of updating that would be required for effective professional re-engagement. Academic journals, conference proceedings, and technical reports provided comprehensive information about advances in reactor design, safety protocols, computational methods, and regulatory frameworks that had emerged during my years of domestic focus. This research revealed both the extent of technological progress and the continued relevance of fundamental principles and methodologies that I had mastered during my graduate studies. New computational tools had enhanced the efficiency and accuracy of neutron flux calculations, but the underlying mathematical frameworks remained consistent with approaches I had developed. Advanced materials had improved reactor component performance, but the analytical methods for evaluating material properties continued to rely on principles I understood thoroughly. Updated safety protocols had incorporated new experimental data and operational experience, but the risk assessment methodologies continued to employ statistical and modeling techniques that were familiar from my research background. Evolving international standards had refined regulatory requirements, but the technical foundations for compliance evaluation remained grounded in scientific principles that were central to my expertise. The research process also revealed inspiring examples of professionals who had successfully navigated career transitions similar to what I was considering. Dr. Sarah Kim had returned to nuclear research at Oak Ridge National Laboratory after 8 years focused on family responsibilities, eventually leading groundbreaking projects in advanced reactor design. Dr. Maria Rodriguez had rejoined Los Alamos National Laboratory following a decade of part-time consulting work, ultimately becoming a senior scientist whose innovations influenced national energy policy. These success stories demonstrated that career interruptions need not preclude significant professional achievement in nuclear science. The examples showed that returning researchers often brought enhanced perspective and problem-solving capabilities that enriched their contributions to complex technical challenges. The combination of advanced technical expertise with life experience and diverse perspectives could create unique value in research environments that benefited from innovative approaches to established problems. I also researched the specific work environments and organizational cultures at the national laboratories where positions were available. Los Alamos National Laboratory maintained a collaborative research environment where interdisciplinary teams addressed complex challenges that required diverse expertise and innovative approaches. The laboratory culture emphasized scientific excellence while supporting professional development and work-life balance initiatives that recognized the importance of personal circumstances in career planning. Sandia National Laboratories had developed reputation for technical innovation, combined with practical application focus that ensured research contributed to real-world problem-solving. The organization supported flexible work arrangements and professional development opportunities that enabled researchers to maintain cutting-edge expertise while managing family responsibilities and personal priorities. Lawrence Livermore National Laboratory offered opportunities to contribute to national security initiatives while pursuing fundamental research that advanced scientific understanding. The laboratory environment encouraged collaboration with academic institutions and international research organizations, providing exposure to diverse perspectives and methodologies that enhanced professional development. The research into organizational cultures revealed that national laboratories had evolved significantly in their approaches to supporting diverse career paths and recognizing the value of different life experiences in scientific research. The traditional model of continuous linear career progression had been supplemented by recognition that alternative pathways could produce equally valuable contributions to research objectives. However, my research also uncovered practical challenges that would require careful consideration and planning. Security clearance requirements imposed restrictions on international travel and collaboration that could limit certain research opportunities. Classified work environments required adherence to strict protocols that governed information sharing and project discussion, even within family relationships. The classified nature of much nuclear research meant that detailed discussion of work activities with Richard would be prohibited, potentially creating new dynamics in our marriage where professional experiences could not be shared in the comprehensive manner we had previously maintained. This separation of professional and personal spheres represented an adjustment that would require thoughtful management to preserve relationship intimacy while respecting security requirements. Geographic considerations presented additional complexity, as the most attractive research positions were located at facilities that would require relocation or extensive commuting from our current residence in Albuquerque. Los Alamos National Laboratory was approximately 1 hour from our home, making daily commuting feasible but demanding. Lawrence Livermore National Laboratory and other attractive opportunities would require relocation that could disrupt Richard's established career at Sandia National Laboratories. Financial analysis of the career opportunities revealed compelling advantages that could significantly improve our economic circumstances. The compensation offered for nuclear research positions exceeded our current household income substantially, potentially enabling enhanced financial security and expanded lifestyle options. The benefits packages included comprehensive health coverage, retirement contributions, and professional development support that exceeded what was available through Richard's current employment. The financial independence that could result from my professional re-engagement would alter the economic dynamics of our marriage, potentially reducing Richard's role as primary financial provider, while creating new options for family decision-making and resource allocation. This shift could enhance our overall economic stability while providing greater flexibility for pursuing personal and professional interests. However, the research also revealed that pursuing these opportunities would require substantial initial investment in professional development and potential relocation costs that could create short-term financial pressure. The continuing education programs, while comprehensive and effective, required time and expense that would need to be managed alongside ongoing household obligations and Richard's career demands. I developed detailed analysis of various scenarios for career re-engagement, comparing the costs and benefits of different approaches to professional development and employment. Part-time consulting arrangements could provide gradual reintroduction to nuclear research while maintaining flexibility for family responsibilities. Full-time research positions offered greater professional engagement and advancement opportunities, but required more substantial commitments and potential disruptions to established routines. The scenario analysis revealed that multiple pathways existed for meaningful professional re-engagement, each with different implications for family dynamics, financial circumstances, and long-term career development. The availability of options provided reassurance that career decisions could be tailored to accommodate personal priorities and family considerations while still enabling significant professional achievement. During this research period, I maintained regular communication with Dr. Vasquez, who provided additional information about specific positions and answered questions about application procedures and timeline expectations. Her continued engagement demonstrated genuine interest in supporting my career development rather than merely fulfilling routine workforce development responsibilities. Dr. Vasquez also connected me with other researchers who had navigated similar career transitions, providing opportunities for informal mentoring conversations that offered practical insights about managing the challenges and opportunities associated with returning to nuclear research after extended absence. These conversations provided encouragement and realistic perspective about what could be achieved through systematic preparation and determined effort. The mentoring discussions revealed that successful career re-entry required not only technical preparation, but also psychological readiness to engage with demanding professional challenges and competitive research environments. The confidence and professional identity that were necessary for effective performance in advanced research positions needed to be systematically rebuilt through preparation and early success experiences. However, the research and mentoring conversations also demonstrated that the capabilities and expertise I had developed during my graduate studies remained valuable foundations for professional re-engagement. The analytical thinking, problem-solving skills, and technical knowledge that had enabled my doctoral research were transferable to current challenges in nuclear science, even if specific applications required updating and refinement. As my research progressed, I began developing concrete plans for pursuing professional development opportunities that would prepare me for effective re-engagement in nuclear research. The Department of Energy continuing education programs offered structured pathways for updating technical knowledge, while building confidence through systematic skill development and practical application opportunities. I also identified specific research positions that aligned most closely with my interests and expertise, focusing on opportunities that would provide meaningful professional challenges while accommodating family considerations and geographic constraints. The targeted approach would enable focused preparation and strategic application processes that maximize the likelihood of successful career re-entry. The research phase had transformed vague possibilities into concrete plans with realistic timelines and clear requirements. Dr. Vasquez's initial assessment of my qualifications and current workforce demands had been validated through independent investigation, confirming that meaningful opportunities existed for professional re-engagement in nuclear science. However, pursuing these opportunities would require decisive action and sustained commitment that went beyond research and planning. The transition from investigation to implementation would demand confidence and determination that challenged the limiting beliefs and family dynamics that had shaped my decisions for nearly 8 years. The comprehensive understanding I had developed of available opportunities, required preparation, and potential outcomes provided the foundation for informed decision-making about my professional future. The question that remained was whether I possessed the courage and persistence necessary to transform research into action and overcome the resistance that would inevitably accompany such a significant life change. The accumulated research and documentation that had occupied my attention for 3 weeks reached a critical juncture when Dr. Elena Vasquez contacted me with time-sensitive information about a senior research position at Los Alamos National Laboratory. The position had become available unexpectedly due to the retirement of a principal investigator, and the laboratory needed to identify qualified candidates within a compressed timeline to maintain continuity for important national security research initiatives. The opportunity represented exactly the type of meaningful professional engagement that my research had identified as ideal for career re-entry. The position involved leading computational modeling projects for advanced reactor safety systems, work that aligned directly with my doctoral research expertise while offering opportunities to contribute to cutting-edge developments in nuclear technology. The compensation exceeded my most optimistic expectations, and the research environment would provide intellectual stimulation that had been absent from my activities for nearly 8 years. However, the accelerated timeline for application submission required immediate decision-making about whether to pursue this specific opportunity or continue the deliberate preparation process that I had been following since my meeting with Dr. Vasquez. The application deadline was 10 days away, necessitating rapid completion of materials that would typically require weeks of careful preparation and review. Dr. Vasquez emphasized that this position represented an exceptional opportunity that might not be available again for several years. Given the specialized nature of the work, and the limited number of senior research roles at national laboratories. The laboratory had specifically requested her assistance in identifying candidates with my particular combination of educational background and research experience, suggesting that my qualifications were uniquely suited to their requirements. The urgency of this opportunity created pressure that challenged my inclination toward comprehensive preparation and careful planning. The systematic approach that I had been pursuing allowed for gradual confidence building and thorough consideration of family implications, but the compressed timeline for this position required immediate commitment and decisive action that felt both exciting and overwhelming. I spent the weekend reviewing application requirements and assessing whether I possessed the current knowledge and confidence necessary for competitive candidacy. The position description required expertise in computational fluid dynamics, neutron transport calculations, and statistical risk assessment methodologies that were central to my doctoral research, though specific software applications and regulatory frameworks had evolved during my absence from professional practice. The technical requirements aligned closely with capabilities I had demonstrated during my graduate studies, but successfully competing for this position would require translating historical expertise into convincing evidence of current competence and future potential. The application materials needed to address potential concerns about career interruption while emphasizing the continued relevance of my research background and my readiness for immediate professional engagement. The personal statement component of the application demanded articulation of professional goals and career motivations that I had not formally expressed for years. The process of writing about my aspirations for contributing to nuclear research and policy development required reconnection with ambitions that had been dormant during my extended focus on domestic responsibilities and volunteer activities. As I drafted responses to application questions about research interests and career objectives, I discovered that my enthusiasm for nuclear science remained strong, and that my understanding of important challenges in the field had been maintained through continued reading and professional development activities. The passion that had originally motivated my pursuit of advanced education in nuclear physics had not diminished during my years away from professional practice. However, the application process also revealed areas where my knowledge required updating and my confidence needed strengthening. Recent developments in reactor design, updated safety protocols, and evolving computational tools represented topics where additional preparation would enhance my effectiveness in the position. The continuing education programs that Dr. Vasquez had described would address these knowledge gaps, but the current application required demonstration of readiness based on existing capabilities. The weekend dedicated to application preparation became an intensive process of reconnecting with my professional identity and capabilities, while addressing realistic concerns about readiness for demanding research responsibilities. The documentation required for the application forced comprehensive self-assessment that revealed both the substantial expertise I possessed and the areas where additional development would be beneficial. The most challenging aspect of the application process was managing the family dynamics that had become increasingly tense, as Richard recognized that my interest in professional re-engagement was developing into concrete action rather than remaining theoretical consideration. His resistance to my career pursuits had intensified as the possibilities became more specific and the timeline for decision-making accelerated. Richard expressed concerns about the timing of this opportunity, suggesting that the compressed application schedule indicated poor planning and unrealistic expectations from the laboratory. He questioned whether the position was genuinely attractive or whether the urgency reflected underlying problems that had prompted the previous researcher's departure. His skepticism extended to broader questions about the wisdom of pursuing demanding professional responsibilities after years of absence from nuclear research. These objections contained elements of legitimate concern, but they also reflected deeper resistance to changes that would alter our established domestic arrangements and potentially challenge his role as the primary professional achiever in our family. The possibility that I might secure a prestigious research position with compensation exceeding his current salary clearly represented developments that he was not prepared to embrace enthusiastically. The tension in our household reached unprecedented levels as I worked on application materials, while Richard continued to articulate reasons why pursuing this opportunity would be inadvisable. Our conversations became increasingly strained, as it became apparent that we held fundamentally different perspectives on the significance of this career opportunity and its implications for our future together. Richard's opposition extended beyond practical concerns to include suggestions that my interest in returning to nuclear research reflected dissatisfaction with our marriage and family life that should be addressed through other means. He proposed alternative activities that could provide intellectual stimulation without the demands and complications associated with professional employment in nuclear science. These alternatives included expanded volunteer work at the National Museum of Nuclear Science and History, involvement in local environmental organizations, or pursuit of part-time teaching opportunities at community colleges. Richard argued that such activities would provide meaningful engagement with nuclear science topics while maintaining the flexibility and family focus that had characterized our established lifestyle. However, these suggestions fundamentally misunderstood the nature of my professional aspirations and the significance of the opportunity that Dr. Vasquez had presented. The research position at Los Alamos National Laboratory offered not merely intellectual engagement, but the possibility of contributing to important national research initiatives that could influence energy policy and environmental protection on scales that volunteer activities could never achieve. The potential for meaningful professional impact represented exactly the type of contribution that had originally motivated my pursuit of advanced education in nuclear physics. The opportunity to apply sophisticated analytical capabilities to challenges that affected national security and environmental sustainability offered fulfillment that could not be replicated through alternative activities that lacked the scope and significance of national laboratory research. As the application deadline approached, I faced a decision that extended far beyond this specific position, to encompass fundamental questions about my identity, priorities, and vision for my remaining professional years. The choice between maintaining our established domestic arrangements and pursuing demanding professional re-engagement represented different conceptions of meaningful contribution and personal fulfillment. The systematic research I had conducted during the previous weeks provided comprehensive understanding of the opportunities, requirements, and potential outcomes associated with career re-entry in nuclear science. The mentoring conversations had offered realistic perspective on the challenges and rewards of returning to demanding professional responsibilities after extended absence. The financial analysis had demonstrated substantial economic advantages that could enhance our family's security and options. However, the decision ultimately required courage and determination that transcended rational analysis of costs and benefits. The transformation from accepting limitations to pursuing ambitious professional goals demanded psychological change that challenged years of conditioning and family dynamics that had reinforced secondary roles and minimized aspirations. The application materials I had prepared represented my strongest possible presentation of qualifications and readiness for this research position. The personal statement articulated genuine enthusiasm for contributing to nuclear research, while acknowledging areas where continued development would enhance effectiveness. The technical responses demonstrated sophisticated understanding of current challenges, while emphasizing the continued relevance of my research background. The reference letters I had requested from former advisors at Stanford University would provide authoritative assessment of my capabilities and potential from individuals who understood both the demands of advanced nuclear research and my demonstrated ability to meet such challenges. Dr. Margaret Chen and Dr. Robert Martinez had agreed to provide comprehensive recommendations that addressed both my historical achievements and my current readiness for professional re-engagement. On the evening before the application deadline, I reviewed all materials one final time while considering whether I possessed the confidence and commitment necessary to submit these documents and begin the intensive interview process that would follow. The decision represented a point of no return where previous limitations would be rejected in favor of pursuing opportunities that aligned with my capabilities and aspirations. Richard made one final attempt to dissuade me from submitting the application, arguing that the risks associated with career change outweighed the potential benefits and that our current lifestyle provided adequate satisfaction and security. He suggested that pursuing this opportunity reflected poor judgment and inadequate appreciation for the stability and comfort that our established arrangements provided. However, his arguments no longer carried the persuasive power they had possessed during earlier phases of our discussions. The comprehensive research and preparation I had completed provided confidence in my assessment of the opportunities and my readiness to pursue them effectively. The support and encouragement I had received from Dr. Vasquez and other mentors offered external validation that balanced the resistance I was experiencing within my family. The transformation in my perspective had progressed to the point where Richard's objections appeared to reflect his discomfort with change, rather than legitimate concerns about my capabilities or the wisdom of pursuing this opportunity. The limiting beliefs that had shaped our relationship dynamics for years no longer felt authoritative or protective, but rather restrictive and inconsistent with realistic assessment of my potential. I submitted the application materials electronically at 11:30 that evening, completing the process with a sense of both relief and anticipation that marked a fundamental shift in how I approached professional opportunities and personal goals. The decision represented rejection of the limitations that had constrained my aspirations for nearly 8 years, and commitment to pursuing the meaningful professional engagement that my research had demonstrated was both available and achievable. The confirmation email from Los Alamos National Laboratory indicated that interview scheduling would begin within 1 week, and that the selection process would be completed within 3 weeks of the application deadline. The timeline was aggressive but reflected the laboratory's urgent need to maintain continuity for important research initiatives that could not be delayed indefinitely. The period between application submission and interview notification would provide time for final preparation and for managing family dynamics that had become increasingly strained as my commitment to pursuing this opportunity became apparent. Richard's resistance had not diminished following my decision to apply, and our relationship would require careful attention to prevent lasting damage from the tensions that had emerged during this decision-making process. However, the primary focus during this waiting period would be preparation for interviews that would require demonstration of both technical competence and professional readiness. The interview process would involve multiple sessions with research teams, laboratory leadership, and security personnel, who would evaluate my suitability for access to classified research projects and my potential for meaningful contribution to national laboratory objectives. The preparation required for these interviews would build on the systematic research and self-assessment I had completed during the application process, while addressing specific topics and scenarios that would likely be covered during the evaluation sessions. The interview success would depend on confident articulation of capabilities and clear demonstration of readiness for the demanding responsibilities associated with senior research positions. As I began this final phase of preparation, I experienced the kind of focused determination and intellectual engagement that had been absent from my activities for years. The challenge of competing for this position and demonstrating readiness for meaningful professional re-engagement provided exactly the type of purposeful activity that I had been missing during my extended focus on domestic responsibilities and volunteer work. The decision to pursue this opportunity had transformed theoretical possibilities into practical goals with specific requirements and measurable outcomes. The choice represented commitment to personal and professional growth that would extend far beyond this individual position to encompass broader transformation in how I approached challenges and opportunities throughout my remaining career years. The stage was set for interviews that would determine whether my assessment of readiness and the external validation I had received from Dr. Vasquez and other mentors would translate into successful competition for this research position. The outcome would provide definitive evidence of whether my capabilities remained sufficient for demanding professional engagement and whether the career reentry pathway I had identified was realistic and achievable. The telephone call from Los Alamos National Laboratory arrived precisely 6 days after I submitted my application materials, interrupting my morning routine of household management and volunteer activity planning, with news that would fundamentally alter the trajectory of my professional life. Dr. Michael Thompson, the section leader for Advanced Reactor Safety Systems, informed me that my application had advanced to the interview phase and requested my availability for a comprehensive evaluation process scheduled for the following week. The interview structure would encompass 3 distinct phases designed to assess different aspects of my qualifications and readiness for the research position. The technical evaluation would involve presentations of my doctoral research and discussions of current challenges in reactor safety modeling with senior scientists who possess deep expertise in computational methods and experimental validation techniques. The administrative interview would address security clearance status, professional development plans, and integration strategies for joining ongoing research projects with established timelines and deliverable requirements. The final phase would consist of informal meetings with potential colleagues and laboratory leadership, to evaluate cultural fit and collaborative capabilities within the research environment at Los Alamos. This comprehensive assessment approach reflected the laboratory's commitment to identifying candidates who possessed not only technical expertise, but also the interpersonal skills and professional maturity necessary for effective contribution to multidisciplinary research teams addressing complex national security challenges. Dr. Thompson emphasized that the evaluation process was highly competitive, with candidates being considered who possessed extensive experience in national laboratory environments and current involvement in classified research projects. However, he indicated that my unique combination of advanced computational expertise and fresh perspective on established problems had generated significant interest among the research team members who would be involved in the selection decision. The telephone conversation provided essential information about expectations and evaluation criteria, while creating immediate pressure to prepare for interviews that would occur within 7 days. The compressed timeline reflected the laboratory's urgent need to maintain continuity for research projects that supported national security objectives, but it also required intensive preparation that would challenge my ability to demonstrate readiness for demanding professional responsibilities. Following the call from Dr. Thompson, I immediately contacted Dr. Elena Vasquez to inform her of this development and request guidance on interview preparation strategies. Dr. Vasquez expressed genuine enthusiasm about my advancement to the interview phase, while acknowledging that the evaluation process would require demonstration of both technical competence and professional confidence that had not been tested for nearly 8 years. Dr. Vasquez provided detailed insights into the interview approach and evaluation criteria that would be employed by Los Alamos National Laboratory. The technical presentations would need to demonstrate not only historical research achievements, but also understanding of current challenges and potential contributions to ongoing projects. The discussions with senior scientists would assess analytical thinking capabilities and collaborative potential, rather than focusing exclusively on knowledge of specific methodologies or technologies. The administrative interviews would examine practical aspects of professional re-engagement, including timeline expectations for achieving full productivity, continuing education requirements for maintaining current expertise, and integration strategies for adapting to the demanding pace and security protocols that characterized national laboratory research environments. These discussions would provide opportunities to address concerns about career interruption, while emphasizing capabilities and commitment that supported successful transition. The guidance from Dr. Vasquez emphasized that successful interview performance would depend on confident articulation of qualifications and clear demonstration of enthusiasm for contributing to meaningful research challenges. The evaluation process was designed to identify candidates who possessed both technical expertise and personal characteristics that would enable them to thrive in collaborative research environments, addressing complex problems with significant implications for national security and environmental protection. The week of interview preparation became an intensive process of reviewing technical materials, updating knowledge of current developments, and practicing presentation skills that had not been utilized for professional purposes in years. The doctoral dissertation that formed the foundation of my research background required comprehensive review to ensure fluent discussion of methodologies, findings, and practical applications that remained relevant to current reactor safety challenges. Recent publications in nuclear engineering journals provided information about technological advances and regulatory developments that had occurred during my absence from active research. The computational tools and experimental techniques that were now standard practice in reactor safety modeling required sufficient understanding to enable meaningful discussion with senior scientists who utilize these approaches daily in their research activities. The presentation preparation process revealed both the continued relevance of my historical research and the scope of updating that would be required for full effectiveness in current research environments. The fundamental principles and analytical frameworks that I had developed during my doctoral studies remained applicable to contemporary challenges, but specific implementations and technological applications had evolved substantially during my years of domestic focus. However, the preparation also demonstrated that my intellectual capabilities and analytical thinking skills had been maintained, despite extended absence from demanding technical work. The mathematical reasoning and problem-solving approaches that had enabled my graduate research achievements remained accessible and could be effectively applied to current challenges in reactor safety modeling and computational optimization. The practice presentations I conducted in preparation for the technical evaluation helped rebuild confidence in my ability to articulate complex concepts and engage meaningfully with sophisticated technical discussions. The process of organizing research findings and explaining methodologies to imaginary audiences restored familiarity with professional communication styles and analytical presentation techniques that were essential for success in national laboratory environments. The administrative preparation involved developing clear explanations for career interruption that emphasized continued intellectual engagement and systematic professional development, rather than focusing on limitations or obstacles that had prevented earlier re-entry. The narrative needed to demonstrate intentional choice-making about timing and circumstances while highlighting readiness and enthusiasm for resuming demanding professional responsibilities. The interview week arrived with a mixture of anticipation and anxiety that reflected the significance of this opportunity for my professional future and personal fulfillment. The success or failure of these evaluations would provide definitive evidence of whether my assessment of readiness and the external validation I had received were accurate indicators of current capabilities and competitive potential. The drive to Los Alamos National Laboratory on the morning of my first interview session required the same security clearance procedures that Richard and I had completed several weeks earlier, but this time I approached the facility as a serious candidate for employment rather than merely accompanying my spouse through routine clearance requirements. The transformation in perspective felt both subtle and profound as I presented credentials and underwent security screening as an individual professional rather than a dependent family member. The Advanced Reactor Safety Systems section occupied a modern building within the laboratory complex that housed computational resources and experimental facilities dedicated to nuclear technology research and development. The environment combined the serious functionality characteristic of national security facilities with the intellectual energy typical of institutions, where leading scientists addressed complex challenges with significant implications for technological advancement and policy development. Dr. Michael Thompson greeted me in the section lobby with professional courtesy that reflected both respect for my background and realistic assessment of the evaluation challenges that lay ahead. His initial conversation provided orientation information about the research environment and project objectives, while establishing expectations for the interview process that would unfold over the following 2 days. The technical evaluation began with my presentation of doctoral research findings and their relationship to current challenges in reactor safety optimization. The audience consisted of 5 senior scientists whose expertise encompassed computational modeling, experimental validation, and regulatory analysis relevant to advanced reactor design and safety assessment. Their questions demonstrated sophisticated understanding of technical issues, while testing my ability to engage meaningfully with current research priorities and methodological approaches. The presentation proceeded smoothly through explanation of mathematical frameworks and computational methodologies that I had developed during my Stanford research. The analytical approaches and optimization techniques that formed the core of my dissertation work generated genuine interest among the audience members, who recognized connections to current projects and potential applications for ongoing research initiatives. However, the question and answer session revealed knowledge gaps that had developed during my absence from active research engagement. Recent advances in computational tools, updated experimental techniques, and evolving regulatory frameworks represented areas where my understanding required updating to achieve full effectiveness in current research environments. The senior scientists posed questions about specific software applications and regulatory standards that had been implemented during my years of domestic focus. These knowledge gaps created moments of uncertainty and discomfort during the technical evaluation, as I struggled to provide comprehensive responses to questions about current methodologies and regulatory requirements. The gaps highlighted the reality that professional re-engagement would require substantial continuing education and systematic updating of technical expertise to achieve the level of current competence expected in national laboratory research positions. However, the evaluation also demonstrated that my fundamental analytical capabilities and problem-solving approaches remained strong and relevant to current challenges. When discussions focused on conceptual issues and methodological principles rather than specific technological implementations, I was able to engage confidently and contribute meaningful insights that generated positive responses from the evaluation team. The senior scientists appeared to recognize that knowledge gaps were manageable obstacles that could be addressed through systematic professional development rather than fundamental limitations that would prevent effective contribution to research objectives. Their questions evolved from testing current knowledge to exploring analytical thinking capabilities and potential for rapid learning and adaptation to new technological environments. The first day of interviews concluded with informal conversations with potential colleagues who would be involved in collaborative research projects if I were selected for the position. These discussions provided opportunities to demonstrate interpersonal skills and collaborative capabilities, while learning about the research culture and team dynamics that characterized the Advanced Reactor Safety Systems section. The informal meetings revealed that the research environment emphasized collaborative problem-solving and interdisciplinary approaches that drew on diverse expertise and perspectives to address complex technical challenges. The team members expressed appreciation for the potential contributions that someone with my background and fresh perspective could provide to ongoing projects that had benefited from established approaches but might gain from innovative methodologies and analytical frameworks. The conversations also addressed practical aspects of professional reintegration, including expectations for productivity timelines, continuing education support, and mentoring relationships that would facilitate effective adaptation to national laboratory research environments. The team members demonstrated understanding of the challenges associated with career re-entry, while expressing confidence that systematic support and appropriate preparation could enable successful transition. The evening between the first and second day of interviews provided time for reflection on performance and preparation for the administrative evaluation that would complete the assessment process. The technical sessions had revealed both strengths and limitations while generating generally positive responses from evaluation team members who appreciated my analytical capabilities and research background. The administrative interview focused on practical aspects of employment, including security clearance status, professional development plans, and integration strategies for joining ongoing research projects with established deliverable requirements and timeline expectations. These discussions provided opportunities to address concerns about career interruption while demonstrating commitment and systematic planning for successful professional re-engagement. The conversations with laboratory leadership addressed broader questions about career objectives and potential contributions to institutional research priorities beyond immediate project requirements. The administrators expressed interest in my perspective on workforce development challenges and strategies for attracting and retaining qualified researchers in specialized areas where national laboratory capabilities were essential for addressing national security objectives. The administrative evaluation concluded with discussion of compensation, benefits, and employment timeline that would be involved if I were selected for the research position. The terms offered exceeded my expectations substantially, while providing comprehensive support for continuing education and professional development that would ensure effective performance and continued advancement in national laboratory research environments. The completion of the interview process created a period of waiting and uncertainty, while laboratory leadership evaluated all candidates and made selection decisions based on technical competence, professional readiness, and potential for meaningful contribution to research objectives. The timeline for notification was approximately 2 weeks, during which I would maintain normal routines while processing the experience and implications of having pursued this significant professional opportunity. The drive home from Los Alamos following the final interview session provided time for reflection on the experience and assessment of performance during the evaluation process. The interviews had challenged my technical knowledge and professional confidence, while providing opportunities to demonstrate analytical capabilities and enthusiasm for contributing to meaningful research challenges. The experience had also revealed the reality that professional re-engagement would require sustained effort and systematic preparation, rather than simply relying on historical achievements and dormant capabilities. The knowledge gaps and confidence limitations that had emerged during the evaluation process highlighted areas where additional development would be necessary for achieving full effectiveness in demanding research environments. However, the positive responses from evaluation team members and the genuine interest expressed in my potential contributions provided encouragement that career re-entry remained achievable, despite the challenges that would be involved in updating technical expertise and rebuilding professional confidence. The interview process had demonstrated that my fundamental capabilities remained strong and relevant to current research priorities, even if specific applications required updating and refinement. The 2 weeks following my interview at Los Alamos National Laboratory created an unusual period of suspended anticipation while I awaited notification of the selection decision. Rather than allowing this uncertainty to generate anxiety and inactivity, I chose to utilize the waiting period for systematic skill development that would prepare me for professional re-engagement regardless of the outcome of this specific opportunity. The interview experience had provided valuable insights into knowledge gaps and competency areas that required updating for effective performance in contemporary nuclear research environments. The technical discussions during my evaluation had revealed that computational tools for reactor modeling had advanced significantly during my absence from active research. Software packages that were now standard practice for neutron transport calculations and thermal hydraulic analysis represented sophisticated technological developments that built upon fundamental principles I understood thoroughly, but required practical familiarity with current implementations and user interfaces. I established a structured learning program focused on acquiring proficiency with contemporary computational tools, while refreshing my understanding of recent developments in nuclear materials science and regulatory frameworks. The approach combined independent study using online resources and technical documentation, with practical exercises designed to build hands-on experience with software applications that were essential for current research activities. The Massachusetts Institute of Technology had developed comprehensive online courses in advanced reactor physics that incorporated current computational methodologies while building upon fundamental principles covered in traditional graduate curricula. These courses provided systematic introduction to software tools and analytical techniques that were now standard practice in national laboratory research environments, offering structured learning opportunities that could be completed according to flexible schedules. Stanford University maintained continuing education programs for nuclear engineering professionals that addressed recent technological advances and regulatory changes affecting reactor design and safety assessment. These programs recognized that experienced researchers required systematic updating rather than comprehensive retraining, providing focused instruction on new developments while reinforcing fundamental knowledge that remained relevant to current challenges. The American Nuclear Society offered professional development workshops on computational modeling techniques and experimental validation methodologies that provided intensive instruction in current best practices. These workshops included hands-on training with software applications and collaborative exercises that simulated real-world research scenarios, offering practical experience that complemented theoretical learning. I enrolled in selected courses and workshops that addressed the specific knowledge gaps identified during my Los Alamos interview while building broader familiarity with contemporary nuclear research methodologies. The structured learning approach provided systematic skill development while building confidence through measurable progress in technical competency areas that were essential for professional effectiveness. The online course in advanced computational fluid dynamics required substantial time commitment but provided comprehensive introduction to software tools and mathematical frameworks that were now standard for reactor safety modeling. The coursework included programming exercises that restored familiarity with computational techniques while introducing new capabilities that enhanced analytical precision and efficiency. The practical exercises involved solving complex heat transfer and fluid flow problems using current software packages, providing hands-on experience with user interfaces and analytical procedures that would be routine requirements in national laboratory research positions. The problem-solving activities restored confidence in my ability to tackle demanding technical challenges, while demonstrating that my analytical thinking capabilities remained strong and applicable to current methodologies. The Stanford Continuing Education Program addressed recent developments in nuclear materials science that affected reactor component design and safety assessment. New alloy compositions, advanced manufacturing techniques, and enhanced performance characteristics represented significant technological advances that influenced reactor optimization strategies and regulatory compliance requirements. The materials science coursework required integration of chemistry, physics, and engineering principles to understand how new materials enhanced reactor safety and efficiency, while creating new analytical challenges for performance prediction and reliability assessment. The interdisciplinary nature of this subject matter aligned well with my graduate research background, while extending my expertise into areas that were increasingly important for current reactor development initiatives. The American Nuclear Society Workshop on Experimental Validation Techniques provided intensive training in measurement methodologies and data analysis procedures that were used to verify computational model predictions and ensure regulatory compliance. The workshop included laboratory exercises using sophisticated instrumentation and statistical analysis software that were now standard practice for research validation activities. The experimental training restored familiarity with precision measurement techniques while introducing new instrumentation capabilities that enhanced data quality and analytical confidence. The hands-on experience with current laboratory equipment and procedures provided practical knowledge that complemented the computational skills I was developing through other educational activities. During this period of intensive skill development, I maintained regular communication with Dr. Elena Vasquez, who provided encouragement and guidance about professional development strategies that would enhance my competitiveness for future opportunities. Dr. Vasquez connected me with other researchers who had navigated similar career transitions, creating informal mentoring relationships that provided practical insights about managing the challenges and opportunities associated with returning to demanding professional environments. Dr. Sarah Chen, who had returned to nuclear research at Oak Ridge National Laboratory after extended absence, shared detailed information about her experience with skill updating and confidence building during her transition period. Her insights emphasized the importance of systematic preparation combined with realistic expectations about the time required to achieve full professional effectiveness in contemporary research environments. Dr. Maria Rodriguez, who had rejoined Los Alamos National Laboratory following career interruption, provided guidance about managing the psychological aspects of professional re-engagement alongside the technical preparation. Her experience highlighted the importance of building confidence through incremental achievements while maintaining perspective about long-term career development, rather than focusing exclusively on immediate performance expectations. The mentoring conversations revealed that successful career re-entry typically required 6 to 12 months of intensive preparation and adaptation before researchers achieved full effectiveness in demanding national laboratory environments. This timeline reflected not only the need for technical updating but also the psychological adjustment required for managing complex projects, collaborative relationships, and performance expectations that characterized advanced research positions. However, the mentoring discussions also emphasized that researchers who successfully navigated career transitions often brought enhanced perspective and problem-solving capabilities that enriched their contributions to research teams. The combination of advanced technical expertise with diverse life experience and fresh analytical approaches could create unique value in research environments that benefited from innovative thinking and alternative methodologies. The skill development activities I pursued during this waiting period generated measurable progress in technical competency while building confidence through successful completion of challenging coursework and practical exercises. The online Computational Fluid Dynamics course concluded with a comprehensive project that required application of multiple software tools to solve a complex reactor safety optimization problem, demonstrating integration of new skills with existing expertise. The project involved modeling coolant flow patterns in advanced reactor geometries using current computational tools while optimizing heat transfer characteristics to enhance safety margins and operational efficiency. The analytical work required sophisticated mathematical reasoning and systematic problem-solving approaches that drew upon fundamental principles while utilizing contemporary technological capabilities. The successful completion of this project provided concrete evidence that my analytical capabilities remained strong and that technical updating was proceeding effectively. The positive feedback from course instructors validated my approach to skill development, while confirming that professional re-engagement goals were realistic and achievable through sustained preparation and systematic effort. The Stanford Materials Science program concluded with examination of case studies involving reactor component failures and the materials science innovations that addressed these safety challenges. The analytical work required integration of multiple technical disciplines while considering regulatory requirements and economic constraints that influence design decisions and implementation strategies. The case study analysis demonstrated that my ability to synthesize complex technical information and develop practical solutions remained effective despite extended absence from professional practice. The coursework also revealed areas where additional development would enhance my effectiveness, particularly regarding current regulatory frameworks and industry standards that governed materials selection and performance assessment. The American Nuclear Society workshop provided certification in current experimental validation techniques that would be recognized by national laboratories and private research organizations. The certification process required demonstration of competency in measurement procedures, data analysis methodologies, and quality assurance protocols that were essential for research credibility and regulatory compliance. The hands-on training included collaborative exercises with other participants who possessed extensive experience in national laboratory research environments. These interactions provided insights into current research culture and professional expectations, while building networking relationships that could support future career development and collaborative opportunities. The certification achievement represented formal recognition of updated competency in experimental techniques that were essential for advanced nuclear research. The credential provided objective evidence of current capabilities while demonstrating commitment to maintaining professional standards and systematic skill development. As the notification deadline for the Los Alamos position approached, I possessed substantially enhanced technical capabilities, combined with increased confidence in my readiness for demanding professional responsibilities. The systematic skill development activities had addressed the knowledge gaps identified during my interview, while building broader competency in areas that were essential for contemporary nuclear research. The educational achievements also provided concrete evidence of my commitment to professional excellence and systematic preparation for career re-engagement. The completion of demanding coursework and certification programs demonstrated both technical capability and personal determination that would be valued by research organizations seeking qualified personnel for challenging projects. However, the skill development period had also reinforced my understanding that professional re-engagement would require ongoing learning and adaptation, rather than simply achieving a threshold level of competency. The rapid pace of technological advancement in nuclear research meant that maintaining current expertise would require sustained effort and systematic professional development throughout my career. The networking relationships established during this preparation period created valuable connections with researchers and institutions that could provide opportunities for continued learning and professional advancement. The mentoring conversations had evolved into ongoing professional relationships that would support my career development, while contributing to broader efforts to strengthen nuclear research workforce capabilities. The approach I had developed for systematic skill updating and confidence building provided a framework that could be applied to future professional development challenges throughout my career. The combination of structured learning, practical application, and mentoring relationships created comprehensive preparation that addressed both technical competency and professional readiness for demanding research environments. The time invested in skill development during this waiting period had transformed my preparation from theoretical knowledge about available opportunities into practical readiness for meaningful contribution to nuclear research initiatives. The enhanced capabilities and increased confidence positioned me advantageously for pursuing additional opportunities if the Los Alamos position did not materialize, while providing strong foundation for success if the selection process resulted in a positive outcome. The systematic approach to professional development had also demonstrated that career re-entry challenges were manageable through sustained effort and strategic preparation, rather than representing insurmountable obstacles that prevented meaningful re-engagement with nuclear research. The measurable progress achieved during this relatively brief preparation period provided evidence that comprehensive updating could be accomplished within realistic timeframes, through focused effort and appropriate educational resources. The completion of this intensive skill development period coincided with growing anticipation about notification from Los Alamos National Laboratory regarding their selection decision. The enhanced competency and increased confidence I had developed provided strong foundation for whatever opportunities would emerge from this initial step toward professional re-engagement in nuclear research. The telephone call from Dr. Michael Thompson arrived on a Tuesday afternoon precisely 14 days after my interview completion, interrupting my review of advanced computational fluid dynamics materials with news that would validate the extensive preparation and skill development I had undertaken during the waiting period. His voice carried the professional satisfaction characteristic of research leaders who had successfully identified exceptional candidates for critical positions within their organizations. Dr. Thompson informed me that the evaluation committee had reached unanimous consensus regarding my selection for the senior research scientist position within the Advanced Reactor Safety Systems section at Los Alamos National Laboratory. The decision reflected recognition of both my technical qualifications and demonstrated commitment to professional excellence that had been evident throughout the interview process and subsequent communications with laboratory personnel. The position offer included compensation that exceeded my most optimistic expectations by a substantial margin, reflecting the premium value that national laboratories placed on individuals who possessed the specific combination of advanced computational expertise and nuclear physics background that my doctoral research had provided. The comprehensive benefits package encompassed health coverage, retirement contributions, and professional development support that would enable continued growth and advancement within the national laboratory research environment. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.